Thank you for attending today. We are going to have a panel, Street Outreach Team's panel discussion. And my name is Charles Culp. I will be the moderator for this panel. I am the Ambassador Program Manager with the City of Bloomington, and I'm based out of the Community and Family Resource Department, and I pretty much just act like a liaison downtown in the evenings between the unhoused, college students, and business owners. So through my work, I'm going to be just going through some questions and getting the panelists an opportunity to answer questions, talk about what they do, and how it relates to what we're talking about today at the summit. So, great. So to get started, if the panel could kind of go down the line and just introduce themselves, talk about what organization they're representing, and the work that they do.
Am I starting?
Yeah, you're more than welcome.
Hi, I'm Tammy Giles, and I have been at Centerstone for 9 years. I started on the ACT team, and about a year into my position, Greg May, who we're honoring today, realized that I had a passion for working with the unhoused, and a lot of our ACT clients overlapped services and were unhoused and had mental health issues as well. So I started working at Centerstone 9 years ago and have been doing outreach for the last 8.
I'm Kyle Halverson. I work with Indiana Recovery Alliance. I'm the Street Outreach Coordinator as well as a tester in the Connect to Cure program for HIV and hepatitis C.
I am Deborah Stanley. I hail from South Bend, Indiana, Imani Unidad, and we've been around for 21 years, and we do HIV, hepatitis C, syphilis, pregnancy testing. We have a peer-to-peer group. We have a harm reduction drop-in center where people can just come and be themselves, get a meal, get some conversation, get supplies, whatever they need. We also have outreach where we go to different facilities and provide services, and then we also have a street outreach team.
Hi, I'm Kelly Hans. I'm the Executive Director for Holding Space Recovery Project. We are a certified recovery community organization located in Scott County. Our office is actually in Austin, Indiana. And we have a street outreach team. We also have an IRACS team, which is a team of peers that goes inside our Scott County jail. And we provide any kind of resources anybody would need when they come in. We do provide HIV, Hep C testing, referrals to any kind of care that they would need. We have a food pantry, a clothing closet. Our street outreach team runs 3 days a week. We're just a resource center for anybody to come into.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you all. So starting out, what are the biggest challenges that your clients face in accessing substance use and mental health services? Are there any fears or concerns that clients have that the general public might not otherwise consider as a barrier? You don't have to go in order. You can just, if you've got an answer.
Okay. So some of the challenges that our folks face is a one modality service provider who says abstinence only. You know, very few services allow a person choice, and they come with programs that would begin with things like, this is drugs and this is your brain on drugs, and it's kind of like, I don't need to know that. I live with this every day. I know what it does to my body. What I need to know is why I'm doing this to myself, you know. And so things that aren't client-centered, programming, programs that have a start, have a finish, and do not deviate from the program. And so those are some of the challenges, that things are not really client-centered, they're not individualized, that a lot of people don't understand that the use, the harm is symptomatic of something else, and don't take the time to really get to know the person and what's going on with them. So those are some of the challenges that our folks face.
I say too, and we hear this all the time, but stigma. Stigma is huge. some people aren't ready to stop using yet, but if they go somewhere else, and people will try to tell them that they have to stop using, and they're just not ready. But how can we make them safe while they're still using? And then there's a lot of providers out there, and you see it everywhere, within the criminal justice system, within the medical field. You see it everywhere, and they want people to be abstinent-based or to get on MAT, but then people will still judge them for MAT. And I think one of the things that communities don't realize, like a community at large, is when somebody comes in and they ask for help, you have that brief window to help them. And if they have to wait too long, they're not going to come back for help. Or when you call and you know, we have several treatment facilities now compared to what we had 10 years ago. But when you tell somebody they have to wait 2, 3, 4 days before they can get into treatment, we often lose them again. So I think that's one of the biggest things. You know, we'll have, you know, like the prosecutor's office or the probation office call us and say, get somebody into treatment today. And most of the time they don't want to go on their own, but they're being made to go. And then you can't get somebody, every now and again you can find a bed today. But most of the time you can't get them in today. But then, like, what does their insurance look like? And we have to find an insurance navigator that can help get, there's just a whole process that I don't think regular community members understand what all goes into it to help with the resources for what people actually need.
And Kelly brings up an excellent point. The criminalization of health issues. That is a big problem and a big barrier for folks getting and receiving the care that they need and deserve.
And Tammy and I mostly focus on people who are actually unhoused, and if you're not taking programs directly to people, everything is a barrier. You know, literally everything is a barrier. If you don't have $1 to get on the bus, that's a barrier. If you don't have your phone because it got stolen, you don't know what time it is to get to your appointment. Like,
Even having a shower and clean clothing, I've had people say they don't.
and that goes back to the stigma as well. If you don't have access to basic human necessities, it's a barrier, you know. I don't think people who have never lived outside can really truly understand that when you're fighting for your survival, when you're sometimes literally fighting for your survival, but when you're every day looking for food, shelter, you know, when it's 95 degrees outside, having more than one bottle of water, like when it comes down to, are you going to go to this appointment that you made 2 weeks ago, or are you going to try to find food that day? There's an obvious choice of what you're going to do. So really, everything that we consider normal can become a barrier.
Yeah, even our intake process, I feel like, is a barrier, and I've had to bring people in and actually sit with them while they do the whole packet of questions, because getting through those questions is difficult, and they don't want to go talk to a stranger. So I think even, you know, simple things. We have the mobile crisis team now that is wonderful, and they can actually do intakes and have been filling that gap a lot for people that it's harder to get in to do the traditional intake. So that's nice.
And that kind of leads into my next question. Thank you, Tammy. Can anybody here talk about the importance of connection and collaboration with other service providers?
So when I started doing outreach 8 years ago, we were in a little tiny room in the main police station downtown. And there was, I know Beacon was there, Centerstone was there, I think Wheeler. But anyway, I went to a meeting yesterday that has now moved to the substation, and there was over 20 people in the room and 8 different providers from the community all working together. And we meet once a week to collaborate and to talk about high-risk clients and to get out there and, yeah, because we're the ones, boots on the ground. So I think that that's one of the biggest things I've seen be a success over the years is partnership with other people in the community.
And partnership and collaboration, the connections between different agencies. When I said earlier that sometimes it could take 3 or 4 days to get somebody into treatment. Sometimes you can get them in really quick, but as you network, you build those connections and you start collaborating with other agencies. When you are in a pinch and you need somewhere for someone to go, like you just have a list of people that you have built connections with, like other organizations. I was just talking to somebody right before I came up here, and we had a situation a couple of weeks ago, and we needed somewhere. Somebody was found, dropped off at a gas station, and we needed somewhere for this person to go. They were 4 hours, 3.5 hours away from home. And we just started calling everybody that we knew, like as a team, who could get them in the quickest. And we found somebody, like we found an agency that was able to take this person in. And we're grateful for that. But without those different partnerships, connections, collaborations with other agencies, we wouldn't have been able to do that. It takes all of us. Like we hear it said all the time, it takes a village. And will take all of us to be able to help one person.
Yeah, so collaborations are critical, as Kyle mentioned, people who are unhoused. So I serve on a board of a housing development corporation and was able to present to them this whole notion of housing first. And we are now on our 3rd development of a housing first unit that will house people who actively use and have mental health issues. And I was in the office yesterday. I have somebody who is in substandard housing. And so I sat in the office and we didn't stop until we found that person somewhere else to live. And so those relationships are very important. It's important to know the providers in your community, to know who to refer to, who not to refer to. We still have some providers who will tell people if they can't receive the hepatitis C treatment. Well, I need to know that because I'm not going to send my people to you because you are very misinformed and will misinform them. And so those relationships are very, very important for access. We have a relationship with the city of South Bend for transportation. People can get Uber rides, they can get bus tickets and those kinds of things on a monthly basis. And so relationships are foundational to absolutely everything that we do. And so knowing where services are, how we can advocate, when to advocate, those things are very important.
Wonderful. So in your work, how do you ensure that your work is client-centered? Can you speak on the importance of personal relationships and the impacts your services have?
I think personal relationships are the key to absolutely everything when it comes to unhoused folks in particular. The biggest part of my job is going out and talking to people, treating people like human beings that they may not feel like, because most people won't give them a second look. The only way I've gotten people into treatment, the only way I've built those relationships is just having an honest conversation, relating to them, being formerly unhoused myself, just being able to have a conversation with somebody and look them in the eye. A cigarette always helps to start that conversation, but it's really it's vital. I mean, you can't know what somebody needs or what somebody wants unless you ask them. And this sort of goes back to the last question a little bit, but when I started doing this, I just simply asked what's the most important thing that you need. Mostly food and water. We do outreach supplies, we do harm reduction supplies, but when I heard that, I went out to Pantry 279 in Ellettsville and talked to them about what we could possibly do. Building a relationship there. Now I'm there every Saturday. I'm there every Wednesday. They offer to let us do testing there. That relationship's been extremely important to us. But going back to this question, it's just a conversation. It's looking somebody in the eye and treating them like a human being. And building that base allows for other opportunities that maybe wouldn't have happened before.
You're here to everything Kyle said. Because when you do street outreach, that's the first thing, is establishing that relationship. That relationship based on honesty, integrity, commitment, reliability, all of those things. Letting people know who you are first and foremost and why you are there. And then, like you said, the questions are, who are you? Who are you? What do you want and need for yourself and your body? And how can we help you to get there? And going nowhere but where they want us to go. And so, yeah, there are people who want to continue to use. So how do you continue to use without harm? You know, if you want treatment, how can we get you there? You know, whatever it is that that person wants, and operating only on that. And that's hard for a lot of people. We've not everybody can make it in our field and at our organizations, because to be open to giving people their power over themselves, that's so important. And making sure that with every encounter you have with somebody, when you leave, that their self-respect and their dignity is intact.
I've often said street outreach isn't a race, it's a marathon, and it's out there building the rapport. It's the long haul. It's, yeah, building that relationship with people. And it said to share a personal story, and I just had a guy overdosed in the park last week, and I had 4 different unhoused people come up to me in the grocery store, walking my dog on the beeline, to make sure that I knew that this person had overdosed in the park and that his wife was very upset, and could I please check on them, which I did immediately. But yeah, it's just building that rapport. It's the long haul.
I agree with everything they said. Listening. I mean, when building the relationship and when you're talking to them, but like listening, and listening to them and actually hearing what they're telling you, you know. And then if they tell you something about their dog, and then the next time you see them and you ask them how their dog's doing, you know, I mean, it's something little that the rest of us might not think about, but then to them, they're like, oh, she heard me last week when I told her about my dog. So it's that listening to actually hear, and then just building that relationship from there. It's love.
Thank you. What would it look like if your county was the most supportive county in the whole state for people who are unhoused? What would it look like to have such a supportive community that really supported your job and was there to collaborate?
I'm looking that way for this.
It's a little funny, but because that encompasses so more. Because things would have to start at the legislature, at the federal level. You know, that's a big one, but like right in our community, to try to narrow it down, because my brain sometimes gets a little big, like we were saying, that everybody was able to have these kinds of very human relationships and acceptance of others as they are. There would be no criminalization of things. There would be adequate housing for folks. There would be enough food. You know, all of these things. That's a good one, though. It's something we work for, we hope for, we pray for all.
Look, I'm over here dreaming.
Yeah.
So I live in a little small community. We don't have any public transportation. We have 2 cities within our county, and they're 5 miles apart from each other. So unless you want to walk 5 miles or you want to ride a bicycle for 5 miles, when you're in, say, Austin, and they don't even have a grocery store, and you need to go to a grocery store, like that's a 5 mile, 6 mile trek to a grocery store. So in a perfect world, like, I would love public transportation in our community because that's one of the biggest barriers that we have. And we also don't have anywhere for our unhoused population to go. Like, we don't have any kind of shelters. We don't have any kind of, we'll have churches that will open up on a really hot day for like a cooling center, or we'll have churches that will open up on really cold days. We'll have churches, but those are all volunteers, right? So when it gets really cold in the wintertime, they'll open up. But we don't have somewhere for anybody to go, like day to day. Like for somebody, if they need a shower, we do have a couple of churches that have installed showers. But for like in a perfect world, a big community center where people can go, and if they need to stay overnight, or public transportation, housing. If I get to dream big, county politics that are understanding and loving of harm reduction would be wonderful if I can put that on my little list of things to do. We have come a long way in almost 10 years in Scott County, but we still have a long way to go. Our county has become very accepting of recovery, but we are still not very accepting of harm reduction. And in my world, harm reduction is recovery. And I wish everybody would get on the same page with me. It's my dream, right? I can dream it.
Yes.
So if I get to dream it and say it, that's my dream.
And aren't we sort of the community that does have tons of resources? But I feel like even with permanent supportive housing and STRIDE and mobile crisis, and we are filling some of those gaps, and the IRA and integrated health and Health Net, we have more and more services out there, but there's still so much more we could be doing. And Bloomington needs more housing, and that's a whole nother topic.
Kind of to build on that, and if we have more to add, we can definitely discuss it. But what do you think is the biggest barrier for you or your organization being able to help meet the needs of your clients right now?
Affordable housing, affordable housing, affordable housing.
Yeah, I'll second that.
Third.
I agree.
It is one of our biggest barriers. Yeah. In this community, and probably in yours.
Oh, absolutely, because housing is so critical for any individual's health and well-being. The ability to have food, to store food, to have a safe place to lay your head down at night, all of those things. So housing first is very important. So yeah, you got 1, 2, 3, 4 that agree. Food deserts are another big one too, because we do have sections of the community that have no grocery stores, nothing beyond the gas stations. And after you wade through all the drug paraphernalia, the bongs, all of the junk food, there's really no food there. They sell more T-shirts and oh, never mind. But anyway, I'll go off on a tangent. But yeah, so food deserts are also a problem. So housing and food, good nutritional food, yes.
Excellent, thank you. How important is utilizing and understanding lived experience within your organization a means of helping the needs of your clients?
I guess in our organization, everybody there has dealt with substance use issues. A lot of people have dealt with housing insecurity, being unhoused, and I think that it informs us. Lived experience informs the decisions that you make. But really, the reason that you're there, the reason that we're there is because we understand that most people aren't going to be there for our people, and lived experience is it's not everything. I think we need there are aspects of recovery, there are aspects of housing. We need experts in every way, but the lived experience and being able to relate to the people that we're trying to help, at least for me, it's everything. Yeah, it's sort of hard to expand on that.
Relatable. My whole team, I'm trying to think. I don't think I have one person on my team except for the person who helps keep up with my financials that is not a person identified as in long-term recovery. And has experience in the criminal justice system and has experience in an overdose, has experience with a positive HIV diagnosis or a positive Hep C diagnosis. And it just makes us relatable, right? When somebody comes in, and I always tell this story, like I can remember early in my recovery, and I was telling my mom something about the way that I thought, or like a thought that came through my head, and she looked at me in horror and was like, what on earth makes you think like that? Like, why? But then I could go to somebody else in recovery and I could tell them like the thought that was in my head, and they're like, oh, that makes absolute sense, Kelly. And it's just like, my mom thought I was crazy, which she has multiple times throughout my life. But but it's that relatability, right? Like we just get it. Like we understand when we understand what it's like to, be in jail. I have a history of being incarcerated. So when I'm working with somebody who is incarcerated or has been, recently released, like I understand what they just went through. I understand the trauma of being incarcerated, coming out and having a million things thrown at you that you're supposed to do, and you have to get it done, but you don't have a car, you don't have a license, you don't have a place to stay. How am I going to get this done? Are they going to revoke me? Are they going to put me back in? Like all of that, but we've all been there, right? So when you have people with lived experience, we can just walk with you through it. Like we've been there, we've seen it. And just to let somebody know you're going to survive this, it's going to be bumpy, but we can walk with you through this journey, And even when people come in and it's, harm reduction and they don't want to stop using, I can remember when there was a time out there in my life that I didn't want to stop using, and it was just fun, and it was, I don't know that it was ever truly fun, but I thought that it was. But to walk with them through that journey and just make sure that they're eating healthy and that they have water and that they have safe supply and Narcan and the access, just to have somebody that has been there, walked that before them, and shows them love.
It's good. It's good shit. and so we have people who are in recovery from institutionalized workplaces. So we have somebody in recovery from social work feeling that everything they were taught all these years was baloney. I worked for 4 years in San Quentin prison, and that whole criminal legal system, how unjust it is. And so there's a lot of other kinds of lived experiences that are brought to the table as well when we understand how these systems cause harm to folks. And so there is this whole liberation of working in community now and working at a place, being able to live the ideal, to operate as we know people deserve and need to be served.
Yeah, thank you, Deborah. To build off that, Deborah, in regards to the liberating people through the harmful kind of aspects of the system, what are some methods and ways you or your agency builds connections with your residents to strengthen their resilience and support more positive change in their lives?
So helping them to see that they are a part of the community just as they are, and engaging them in opportunities to be a force in community. So it's kind of like I work with the police department. And they were having I was facilitating a series of conversations. They were looking at the use of force, pursuits, their training, all of this. So who better to advise them but folks that's been through that? And so it's, come on, y'all, you go into these tables and you are going to talk. And again, it's helping them to overcome their fears of, and say that you have a role, you have a say, this is your community, beyond that motel, that wherever, that little space that you are in. This entire community belongs to you. They were hiring a director for the new Civil Rights Heritage Center. Come, be a part of that interview process, and it ain't telling nobody you got to clean up, you got to be sober enough. Come as you are and participate. And so, yeah, helping them to understand that they deserve to have a say in their community, taking them to interview candidates for office, asking them questions, asking them, what do you believe about harm reduction? Are you pro-harm reduction? Are you not? And so giving them opportunities for that kind of engagement as well. And it's about helping them to build skills. Some of the times when we accompany them places, because from that support, when sometimes they're fearful, and most of the time the provider will try to talk to us, and it's like, nope, I'm not it. I'm here as a support person, and require that provider to look at them, to speak to them, and you'd be surprised the change in people just by having somebody there. And so it gives them an opportunity to build their skill sets and overcome any kind of internalized stigma or fears that they have as well. And sometimes it's kind of like I was with somebody on one of those intakes, those big, voluminous kinds of intakes, and being able to point to certain things. Why are you having this person sign this? This is not about them, And so because people do that, they just routinely do things, and so it's kind of helping people to understand that to get these services, you ain't got to sign away your firstborn. You ain't got to just sign this, And so taking that time to read through absolutely, and requiring that person sitting on the side of the desk to be patient with that. You sit here and you wait, you explain, and then say, oh, I didn't see a grievance policy in there, but how does this person know when, oh, I forgot, oh, well, go get that. And so those kinds of things are important. And what was the question? Y'all gotta watch me.
That's great. It's mainly, about building resiliency in your clients.
Yes.
So, and if anybody else has anything to add to that.
Okay.
Well, last Friday, we had Overdose Awareness Day. That's getting our community together. I think just about everybody in this community has been touched in one way or another by the opioid crisis. Getting people together to celebrate people's lives, not think of them as the sad news that they received. It's to, Deborah was talking about like the systematic failures. Like, every overdose is preventable. Every accidental overdose is preventable. Getting folks together to celebrate those lives that we've lost gives an opportunity to do a Narcan training, talk to people, intermingle, get, there are other agencies there as well. So, expanding that part. We also do like low threshold employment that gets people, we try to keep it pretty easy. It starts integrating people back into society when you can earn something instead of it being given to you. It's building self-esteem, building confidence, gives us an opportunity to know people better. There are all kinds of things that you can do to just to boost people's self-esteem. I think that's extremely important. I don't know.
No, you do not. No, it's it. Because the other part is that inclusion of families and helping families to learn the difference between support and enabling. And then sometimes helping people establish brand new families. Because too many times the person using in the family becomes the target or the measure of how well I'm doing because you are down there, you know. And so there's a lot to learn when families are included, understanding the dynamics that go on and their needs as well. We a team, baby.
Excellent. What are some challenges that residents, when finding and maintaining housing, that they come across? This could be either getting into your program or folks are moving on to other housing options. What are some of the challenges in regards to that?
The background
Maintaining
check.
it. Yeah. Say it again.
The
Sorry.
background check.
Yeah.
The background check. The background check. How do we get rid of that? That's what I would like to
Well-
get rid of. The background check.
And the-
what is its purpose? The only thing I could think of would be relevant is, have you ever been convicted of arson? Maybe that would be relevant. But still, if they're out here in the world, they need somewhere to live, you know? Maybe we house them in all steel buildings or something, but they still deserve to be housed. And so, to me, that's the biggest one, that background check. Oh,
And the stigma with Section 8.
not only that, but now these folks charge to do the check. So you could spend the whole deposit getting different places to look at your application, these application fees.
Yes.
Oh my goodness. Just ridiculous. And then they get to reject you. So that's a corporate hustle. That's all that is.
And one of the other things too is, along with that background check, when we find this when, you know, in people coming into recovery, or even if they're not in like abstinent recovery or whatever, but if they've ever had an eviction on their record before, and the last one that I knew went back 5 years. So I was working with somebody, they filled an application, the apartment was going to let them move in because their drug charge was 4 years old, but their last eviction was 5 years. And so they were denied and they lost their money on the background check, and all of that was ran. But it's, you know, people don't come into recovery or because, you know, life is perfect and everything has been going amazing for them. Like, we have a past, we've made mistakes. But even, and then the whole thing changes when somebody's practicing harm reduction and they're still actively using. They might have an open case and they've been evicted, and it's just like, it's terrible. The hoops that somebody has to jump through to get housing. I know in our community, I feel like it's that way everywhere else, but
Deposits, all of those things. Yeah. I just got off the phone with a guy who just I was telling you just earlier got housing, and so he was saying that he has to pay a $800 deposit, and the rent is only like $625, but he has to pay an $800 deposit. And he said they want $400 down, and they'll work with him for the rest. And so I'm telling him, you don't need that $400 hanging over your head. We will pay the entire $800. So he's saying, oh, well, you know, I'll work to pay you back. I said, no, you don't have to pay us back. He got a loan from us before. He had to pay that back. And so I'm saying, that was because you mismanaged what you had. You was irresponsible. This is for housing. This is something different. This will be paid. You don't have to pay that back. But so it's working with folks on all kinds of levels, allowing them to take ownership and accountability for some of the mistakes and things that they make, but still supporting them through that, you know. And so when opportunities come up, we can't let them go by the wayside. So yeah. Did that helps?
Great. I'm going to open it up for questions if there's anybody in the audience, and there's a microphone that can go around to kind of facilitate that. Great. So if anybody has a question for anybody on the panel or the panel altogether.
I said feel free to answer all questions.
Yes. What sort of language barriers do you guys face with street outreach? Like people who don't speak English as a first language?
Our smartphones are a wonderful gadget. I've actually had to pull up the translator on my phone a few times. And then we had our deaf guy that we just brought pen and paper when we went out to talk to him, and he wrote stuff.
So language hasn't been a barrier for us.
Yeah, I don't feel like
found, I mean, we have plenty of translators in our community, and I don't find anybody like we have Catholic Charities that does a lot of resettlement, but we haven't found any of those folks that don't speak English. We're the only linguistic place on the planet. Everybody else knows how to speak multiple languages, so. Right.
I was curious if any of you have any experience with something like a reset starter kit that might be given to someone that's recently released, that's looking to, turn that corner. Are you familiar with anything that's given as a tool, a resource to individuals that do want to make that turn upon their release?
So are you talking about release from incarceration, release from treatment, release from...
Release from incarceration, just
okay.
some, just very simple, basic things that they can do to kind of enhance the likelihood that they'll stay on that right path, and I'm thinking even, suggestions of things that they can eat to compensate for, like with opioid addiction. A lot of times they'll talk about individuals
she does like case management,
eating bananas or doing things, that kind of helps offset the negative side of withdrawal and coming off of things like that. Is there anything that you've ever heard of that's given as kind of like a starter kit to individuals that are released? I'm just curious about that.
I mean, in Scott County, we have the integrated reentry and correctional support team that's actually works inside the jail. So when somebody's getting close to a release date or they are released, we have a peer that meets them at the door. Will either help them into treatment or whatever it is that their plan is in place for, that we're there. But other than, we have resource packets that we give them. We do make sure that they have Narcan just in case they find themselves in a situation that they're going to use. When somebody is released from incarceration, their chances of an overdose death is much higher because they've had some time in there. But other than like a food or a packet or most of the time what we see is they're just starving. They want a cigarette and they want real food. So we always make sure that we have cigarettes and like just some chips or a Pop-Tart, something sweet, something that we always have access to. So like when they come out, even if they sit at our office for a couple hours before they have to go wherever they go. But we don't have like packet or like bags made for them to go. Each person is different.
Yeah.
Curious if there's any kind of, diet. That's a good starting point for a lot of people to get their minds right and to feel better. I'm just thinking about natural highs that people can achieve from, filling their bodies with nutritious food like you were discussing. But a lot of people don't even have a frame of reference there, depending on where they began in life. They may not know what nutritional eating looks like. So I was just curious about that because it seems like a missing piece.
That's for sure. So our peer-to-peer program, that's what it's all about. People who are reintegrating, coming back to community from treatment or incarceration. And so they are surrounded by peers. Some of those folks in there have done 36 years in prison, 28 years in prison, been in treatment multiple times. So they come home to a peer group that really gets them. And so some of the things that we have done to try, so again, listening to folks. So one time in a peer-to-peer group, we had a guy who wanted to teach that nutritional, okay, fine. So not only how are we going to support that? So we have vacant lots. So we started a garden project. So we have a garden where we grow. And then we can send people home with at least the tomato plant and the cucumber plant, the two easiest things to grow. And they can do that on an apartment balcony or anywhere. And so when you said kit, I thought about the hospice kit that you get in some little box. But it's a service provision that we provide, and that's that support, you know. And one of the things how we got into nutrition was I was in the juvenile center, and I love to cook. And I'm talking about my dishes, and the kids are talking about what they love to cook, and it was all microwave food. I'm like, that's, you know, and so it just kind of started. So me and the other peer guy, and so we cook. Every week they have a hot nutritional meal. And during the week, you know, so we cook a whole lot. And so you have leftovers. And so we make spaghetti sauce, big old things of spaghetti, homemade spaghetti. And everything is pure and natural. And so it is teaching by living, you know. And so it's yeah, but that is important. And so it's the skills that go along with the knowledge, you know. But it's so much learning by doing. Even one of the biggest things that when people come home from incarceration, they immediately want to become a parent. But here's all this hurt, all this anger, all this. And so, and that's a process. And so again, it's learning by doing. And so helping people to journey with people who have been through that, and helping them to observe their interactions with their children and hear what they had to go through and what was real about those relationships. So that's the kit, so to speak. It's not in a box, but that's the kit.
This is more of a comment when you talked about the housing. The state has a program called the Landlord Litigation Program, and it's specifically for people that have a felony or misdemeanor, whereas, you know, a lot of landlords won't rent to people in recovery. So this litigation program, what it does is it guarantees the landlord, if they rent to you, that if you mess up that property, you tear it up, if you owe them rent or whatever, the state will pay for it.
Right.
So it guarantees the landlord that if they let you come in and rent their housing or apartment to you, that if they mess it up, the state will pay for it.
Yes. Thank you.
Nice, thank you.
And that has helped a few people. Yeah.
There's still the stigma behind
Yeah.
the Section 8. And yeah.
But Tommy, you bring up a very good point. Making more people aware of what's out there to support and to help. Yes. Thank you.
Hi. So I work at the prosecutor's office, and hi. And I have a question. So many times we're dealing with someone who's dealing with pretty significant substance abuse issues, and we're resolving a case, and you're trying to come up with a resolution that you think is going to be the most supportive. What is something, and I open it to anyone, but I'd love to know something you would want me to keep in mind when I'm trying to create a resolution of the case that actually is going to be helpful. What should I think about? What should I consider? And is there something that maybe I'm just missing in terms of perspective that you'd want me to know?
Stop charging people for drug, like stop prosecuting low-level crimes that really don't affect anyone except the person holding a substance. That would be a great start. Yeah, empty the jails.
And so that is a good one. But I would say for you to get out into community to learn what supportive services are there. We have a wonderful relationship with our prosecutor because, again, stuff happens. But I could call my prosecutor and say, that's ours. Give him back to us. And so if you know who has good supportive services, who are going to walk side by side, who are going to be with people no matter what, you can feel comfortable about referring them there rather than prosecuting them. You know, and this is something that angers me. So one time I heard that the only way you could get into drug court was to be found with paraphernalia, you know. So people can sell paraphernalia all day long. They can't interfere with commerce. But as soon as I walk outside that door, I'm prosecuted for having that paraphernalia. And so I would say prosecutors need to get a better understanding of the issues, the problems, and why these things are against the law. And I would say as prosecutors, y'all need to unite and fight and rail against some of this stuff that's really tying y'all's hands, because there's things y'all don't have to prosecute. But see, that's the other thing. Y'all can get together and decide, well, we will not prosecute. You know, like you said, low-level marijuana, somebody got a joint, somebody got a doobie. Why would you even bother with that? You know, somebody has a crack pipe in their pocket. Why would you even bother with that on a prosecutorial level? But try to get them somewhere where they can get the appropriate supports needed so that they don't have to encounter you ever again. And you can move on to the big stuff. Because working in a prison, I know there are some people who do need prosecuting, but most don't. Most don't.
Deborah, I haven't heard it called a doobie in a long time, so thank you. I appreciate that.
Hey, check this out. I'm 70 years old.
Yeah.
I mean, I love saying that too.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Things change. Okay, that concludes our panel discussion. Thank you so much for participating, and thank you to the panelists.